So week 2 of Coachella is finally over, and we'll be talking about all the ups and downs that happened throughout both weekend 1 and weekend 2. I'll also be sharing my opinions on how I feel about everything that went down in the show. Hello, I am Kpop Waltz, and welcome to my channel. There's a lot to discuss, so let's waltz right in. So first we have to discuss The Rose because there's not really much to say about them. I think they did a really good job. First week and second week, I think they killed it on the stage, being the first, I think, Korean rock band to be performing on a Coachella stage is really amazing, and I think it's a really big achievement for them. And I think they did incredibly well. They seemed a lot more free. They were in more casual clothing the second week around. They seemed to be having a lot more fun on the stage because they seemed so much more comfortable because now you've done it before in weekend 1. And weekend 2 is basically just go there and kill it, have fun. But I think they did really great, and I hope that Coachella invites them back again. Now, after their set, their fans did sing happy birthday to Dojun because Dojun's birthday was on Saturday, and because they couldn't celebrate with him on Saturday, they still sang to him after the performance. It was a very sweet moment between the fans and Dojun and the group. I really do look forward to seeing what The Rose does going forward. Now we move on to Ateez, the first K-pop boy group to perform at Coachella. And just like weekend 1, I think they killed it. They absolutely brought energy. This time around, it was so much more energetic, so much more passionate. You can see the fight in their eyes. You can see the need to show people that K-pop is really that good and that Ateez are that good. So this time around, they were wearing Dolce & Gabbana, whereas in the first weekend, they were wearing Valentino. And personally, I think Valentino and Dolce & Gabbana were kind of sharing notes because Sun still came out in just a blazer and very much shirtless, which, a moment. It was a moment. So there were a few familiar faces in the crowd. J Balvin did see them perform. Last week, Hongjung went to go see J Balvin perform, and it was caught on the live stream. And I think they did mention a couple of times enjoying J Balvin and being a huge fan, so he did go see them and support them. Another very familiar face is Bumjung, who is Hongjun's older brother. He came to Coachella to support Ateez. Now, Bumjung is a very big supporter of Ateez. He tries to be at least one concert for every tour that they have. So he's been around, he's seen them perform for a very long time, which is very, very nice. It's very comforting to see your family travel all the way to the States to see you perform. I think all in all, Ateez gave a really great performance. Now, we have to talk about Sungwa's moment when he has that solo in Wonderland, which is the last song in the set, and he pulls the sword and he's walking down the aisle and he just starts screaming. That moment, oh my God. I think the fans will never forget that because that was incredible. That is what Ateez is all about. They're about giving you a show. Now, the fans did speculate that he let out the scream because he was super emotional, or it was just an overwhelming feeling because they had come to the end of their set and they'd performed 2 weeks of Coachella and they had done really well. They had garnered a lot of praise. But someone did come out and say that the scream was because he was losing energy and the wind was blowing sand all around the tent and it was just really dry, I guess. So this was his way of trying to regain energy to finish the set very strongly and very energetically, which I appreciate from Ateez because they do have that experience of adapting to situations on stage and making it seem so natural. Though at the end of Wonderland, you do see him just with one mascara and eyeliner stained tear just running down his cheek. It was such a moment. And from Ateez, you will always get a show within a show. You'll never leave disappointed. And I'm so glad that that moment happened and we got that moment. After their Coachella performance, Ateez were invited to the Dodgers Stadium to throw the first pitch. And, through the first pitch, they seem to have a really good time at the Dodgers Stadium. I think people are recognizing them for their ability and their talent, which I think is well overdue. So good on Ateez. So we have to discuss Sserafim. Performance was better this time around. I think music production-wise, they were better because the vocals were better. The performance was still good, but I do think they took down the dancing intensity a little bit just to fit the vocal production of it all so that they wouldn't be straining their vocals and their breathing to try and catch up when it came to singing and everything. I think they did do a lot better in the vocal department, but performance-wise, they always do really well. I think there's no denying Sserafim when it comes to their performance, their crowd work. They always just look great. They are good at what they do. Now, they are still getting hate for their vocals, and there's a very big reason for it. So the reason why they're getting hate is because weekend 1 and weekend 2, there's a very, very big difference in their vocal abilities and in the vocal performances. And I think the problem is fans are trying to convince people that first week was just bad audio and second week is how they actually sound singing live, which is not completely true. I do know that people are also accusing them of lip syncing, which the girls did not lip sync. They did sing live. They just sang live with an AR backtrack. Now, an AR backtrack is an all recorded track, essentially. So you record live vocals in a stable environment where you are stable and you're not doing all the dancing and all the moving around. And then we add that into the performance, and then you just sing live over the backtrack with the support of the vocals that you had pre-recorded, which is not a really bad thing. I think this is something we're used to in K-pop. The problem is that it's not something they used in the first week, and we all know how that turned out. And then now we have it in the second week, and fans are trying to convince us that this is what they actually sound like. Look, I'm not against the AR and all of that, and I don't think their performance was good. I love their performance. I just hate that fans are trying to convince us that, no, they were actually singing, just because there's one moment when Kazuha didn't actually sing and you can't hear the backtrack, because you could easily, in the studio when recording, pause that part and practice knowing that that part is the part that you don't sing. That's what the all recorded part is you record it to some degree where you try to, I don't say they're trying to fool anybody, but you definitely practice with it, because they have to practice and they have to do sound checks and all these other things. So they were well aware of where to pause, where not to sing, to kind of try to, I guess, fool the audience. I was not fooled. Now, the whole thing with the AR has sparked a lot of debate and a lot of comparisons between Blackpink and Sserafim, because I think Blackpink may have also used an AR track when they performed Coachella. I think when they headlined Coachella. But now the problem is with Blackpink, they used it week 1 and week 2. So you can't really say like we've heard them sing raw and it was terrible, and then the next week it was better. Whereas with Sserafim, unfortunately, that was the case. What I will say about Sserafim is, as good as they are, I do think Hype may have jumped the gun a little bit on sending them to Coachella. I think even though their performance was really well done and it was really good, I think they're too young a group, too inexperienced a group to perform at something this big. And I know everyone's probably going to go back to like aespa performing. And I think aespa had the same problems. They were too young a group. They were too inexperienced. If you send aespa to Coachella right now, I think they'd do a lot better than they did the first time around. Just because the first time around, their stage presence and their performance was not at the level that they're at now. And I think it would be the same with Sserafim. Had they been asked or had they agreed to perform at Coachella maybe later on, it could have been a lot better, and Hype could have saved the girls a lot of backlash and really malicious comments. Could have saved them a lot of heartache, if I can say that. So another thing I really want to point out and discuss is when you go to something like Coachella, especially for a K-pop group, and I think this is something that the Sserafim fans are probably not really seeing. I think this is something that a lot of people are not really seeing, is that when you go to something as big as this, especially as a K-pop group, you're not just going there for yourself and your group and the company maybe. You're going there as yourself, the group, representing a company, representing a genre, which is K-pop, and representing your country. I think it doesn't matter where you're from. What happens a lot of the times is if you are the minority doing something on a really big stage in front of a lot of people, you do become the representation of your country and possibly the continent, with African stars like Davido and Burna Boy. Anytime they've done anything, it's always been the representation of Africa. So when it comes to K-pop, obviously that's the representation of K-pop and of South Korea as a whole. So for Sserafim to go to Coachella and have the vocal problems that they had in week one, I think they didn't represent K-pop as a genre very well. I know that is a lot of pressure to put on them, especially because they are so young and they are such a young group. But this is where the point of they were too inexperienced to be at Coachella comes in. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking that is entirely too much pressure to put on these girls. And I agree, it is. But if you think back to when Blackpink first performed at Coachella in 2019, Blackpink understood, even though their stage was super empty, they understood that what they were doing wasn't just for Blackpink. It was for K-pop, for groups that would come after them. You are put on the stage to show people that go to Coachella and to show Coachella organizers that K-pop can be on a Coachella stage and they can perform at the level of other artists that are being invited to perform at Coachella. And I think they did really well because obviously they were invited back to headline. And they did incredibly when they headlined, thus showing Coachella again that a K-pop act can headline a Coachella event and do really well and bring in a very big audience, because I think at the end of the day, it is about money and it is about how many people your headliner can bring in. And Blackpink did very well in that stance. So with that said, I will give you a second example, which has to be BTS. Obviously, we all know the hashtag BTS paved the way. I think armies use that for almost everything. But if you think about the things that BTS did that led to being almost a normal thing now, with them being invited to MTV Awards and then later on Grammy Awards. Obviously, nobody's been invited to Grammys as of yet, aside from BTS and K-pop. But with MTV Awards, they're constantly being nominated for awards. With Billboards now, they're nominated for awards. They make Billboard top 100, top 200. I think a couple of groups have topped the top 200 Billboard albums chart, I believe. So somebody has to walk the line so that others can be able to walk the same path. But at the same time, if you're in the middle, you have to keep it going so that other people behind you are able to achieve some of what you've achieved as well. Obviously, we're not talking about BTS now because what they've achieved is so high up. Their achievements are so up there. I would take a really, really special group and it would take the perfect time to kind of recreate that kind of success. Now, I have to go back to Ateez performing as the first K-pop boy group on the Coachella stage, because if we're talking about pressure and we're talking about being the first to do anything, this was a heavy load, I think, on their shoulders. Ateez love performing and they're really good at it, but I think this time around, being the first to do something and not really having an example to look back on is very hard, because you know you have to be the one to do it. You have to walk the path that nobody else has walked. And I think Ateez did really well representing K-pop especially, and just how great and how big a performance a K-pop group could put on, especially for boy groups, because we haven't seen boy groups on a Coachella stage. Obviously, we've seen girl groups, Blackpink and aespa, and 21 as well. So this was really big for them to be from a small company and be asked to do this and almost asked to carry this load, knowing very well that they don't really get a lot of the same attention in Korea that they do in the States or in Europe. I think this was a very big moment for them. I think there was more pressure for Ateez being from a small company. And when you look at it, it's not just about representing K-pop and K-pop boy groups. It is also about representing small company groups, because small company groups do get left behind a lot by the bigger company groups just because of money, marketing, and all that connection stuff. If you know, you know. But I think Ateez did very well to represent not just K-pop, K-pop boy groups, but also the small company groups. And I think they should be really proud of what they've achieved. Sserafim as well. I'm not going to cut them out. I think they did a really good job and they adapted with what they had. But Ateez just did a little bit better. Obviously, now that is just my opinion, and you are free to share yours with me in the comments. Make sure to subscribe. I have been Kpop Waltz, and until our next dance with Kpop, goodbye.